Hi Fox, how are you doing? Another of the decisive games of the day in this Norway chess tournament was the game between Topalov and Grischuk in the second round. Another quite interesting Sicilian defense. Topalov's white plays knight f3, but after c5 he transposes into a Sicilian with e4, and we reach the old and good Najdorf variation of the Sicilian. Always looking good and very trendy. Now bishop e3, knight g4, the old Kasparov move, I think. The bishop goes back. This is very common actually to test what line your opponent wants to play, so the bishop goes back. And Topalov now plays h3, preventing the knight from coming back to g4. Now e5, typical move in the Najdorf in some structures, and knight b3, bishop e6, and once again we have this very typical backward d6 pawn for black, which is weak, and the weak square for black, this d5, which cannot be protected by any black pawn, and white usually will try to land a piece there to control lots of squares, but black argues that every piece landed here will be exchanged, etc, etc. That's all the Najdorf theories. Bishop e3 is played. Now the knight, as I said, cannot go back to raise this bishop to g4. Bishop e7, and well, of many possibilities here. Topalov chose f4. The other popular move is to play this way with queen f3. After white black castle short, white does castle long, and for instance b5. Now he goes with a typical kingside attack with g4, for instance. Instead, Topalov goes with the other move, f4, after bishop e7, which after the exchanges on f4 is giving us a curious situation in which both players have an isolated pawn. White has a king's isolated pawn, black has a queen's isolated pawn, and once again both these d5 and e5 squares are weak. e5 is weak for white, d5 is weak for black, because neither pawn can protect this square, so black will try to control and land a strong piece on e5, and white will try to do more or less the same with d5. Now knight c6 is played, and Topalov goes with queen e2, showing his intentions to castle long and probably have some kingside attacking possibilities here. Now knight d7 is played, once again playing with this strategic idea, with this strategic point of occupying e5 with the knight here. Long castle, and knight from c comes to e5. By the way, this is still all theory. Must be widely known between GMs. White basically does the same here, occupies d5 with a knight. Svidler takes that knight, and definitely if white wants to have some possibilities of having an edge, he must take with a piece, in this case with the rook. Black castles, and here is more or less the novelty of the game comes, although it may not be that important for theory, but king b1 is played here, deviating from an old game, Shirov versus Gelfand, 1993, almost 20 years ago. Shirov played with this aggressive way against Boris Gelfand, h4. After rook c8 he went g4. Gelfand finally won that game. Now Topalov deviates, he plays the prophylactic king b1 move, which we already saw in this round in the other Sicilian game between Caruana and Svidler. Queen c7, rook back to d1. Now the knight goes to b6. Arguably it's going to go to c4, supported by the other knight and the queen. So after h4, the other knight in fact goes from e to c4. Interesting move here by Topalov. Multi-proposal move, rook h3, developing the rook to the third rank, and while giving it the possibility to participate in either the attack on the king side or even help in the defense if necessary. Black puts a beautiful bishop on f6, attacking b2, and certainly Grischuk has reached quite a counterplay here, some nice counter-attacking chances on the queen side, very typically Sicilian, so he must be really happy with this opening. He gets all the activity he was seeking for with this knight. c3 must be played, rook to e8, putting the rook in the same file as the queen, where the queen and the isolated white pawn seems to be a good idea. And in fact, well, knight d4, the knight must be kind of relocated. Queen c5 is played, and now knight f5. White is just wasting too many tempos here without helping his bishop on f1, trying to go to improve his knight, but now black has an interesting counter-attack in the center. The very nice d5 move, getting rid of his isolated and weak queen pawn, and using the fact that this pawn is pinned against white queen on this file, so definitely getting lots of counterplay here, black, and really some initiative here. e5 is played here. Black is winning a pawn basically. Bishop takes e5. Always this pin is on the air, in the air, so white must be careful. Topalov gets away from that pin and tries to develop some initiative on the king side, as it was for sure his original idea. Sure, the bishop is still guarding g7, but the knight and the queen are targeting it, so black just cannot take here easily to exchange pieces, whatever. Grischuk just plays g6, not really attacking the knight because the pawn is pinned, it cannot take right now, but just having some defensive structure here. The bishop controls dark squares. Well, h5 is what Topalov chooses, trying to break through, open the h file. But here it comes what is probably one of the most beautiful moves in this game. Very cute one, and actually a move I guess Topalov missed or miscalculated or underestimated or whatever. Really cute move. Queen to f2 with some multi-geometrical proposes. Now, first of all, it's attacking the bishop on f4 with the bishop and the queen. It's also threatening checkmate, something to be considered on b2. And well, also as we will see in a variation, like you might think, well, bishop c1 solves all my problems. The bishop gets out of the attack, b2 gets protected, but that's not solving the problems, but it's hanging a piece. Remember f5, which could not be taken with the pawn, well, but it can be taken with the queen now. And well, this is basically a piece down, piece and the pawn basically down for white, and that's all she wrote. Game over. White is losing. So really, all of a sudden, not a comfortable situation to solve for white. And well, Topalov is a top GM. He found more or less the solution to get out of this tactical melee without having to resign the game. He checks first on h6. Now the knight is not attacked on f5 with this queen, x-rayed, etc. anymore. King g7, the bishop goes back, keeps protecting the knight, protects b2, and well, everything seemed to be protected, but don't forget that black has already won a pawn, and white really doesn't have that much to show for it, except for the bishop pair maybe, on dog turn. Black plays f5, getting space even on the king side, where his king is supposed to be the weaker one. Queen f3, and the queens are swapped off. And well, as I said, only thing white has to show against his pawn disadvantage is maybe on long term his bishop pair or the d5 weak black pawn, but not sure if that's enough. His knight is very oddly placed on the rim, and in fact this is going to be a huge factor in the games. We'll see a couple of moves later. Grischuk defense with rook a8, now g4. Obviously Topalov wants counterplay, wants activity on the king side against his king, otherwise he's not doing anything. But here classical rule comes into the game. When you're attacked in the flank, on the flank, look for counter-attack in the center. So Grischuk does so. He plays d4. Now h takes g6, h takes played, and Topalov plays what seems to be quite a mistake here, which in fact Grischuk is going to exploit brilliantly. Topalov plays rook fd3. I mean, seems logical to double up rooks in in a file which is apparently going to be open, just pin this pawn, etc. But Grischuk is going to show us why this is a mistake. He plays first the very nice knight d5 move, getting back with the knight, and all the point is that this knight on the rim has no squares to go to, and it's only protected with the bishop, so this is a source for tactical complications. Always whenever you have this kind of advantage, if you're black here, that an opponent's piece is only protected by a single piece and cannot go to anywhere, so you must go and forward and look for some complications, trying to exploit that fact, and that's what brilliantly Grischuk does here. White takes here, he takes d4, just to show what would happen if white just does nothing. For instance, say a3, just to make a move. Point is down, knight ce3, the rook is under attack, the knight is not protected anymore by the bishop, the knight is intercepting the bishop, dark diagonal, so white is in some problems here. Well, Topalov took on d4, but now bishop f4 was played. Of course it attacks the knight, of course it can be taken. That's what Topalov does. Knight takes f4. Now two white pieces are under attack, the knight and the rook. Rook f3 was played, but Grischuk finishes the game with another of the most beautiful moves in this game and basically in the round. A very cute way of finishing the resistance of white. The beautiful rook e1 move with lots of tactical resources here for black. White actually resigned, seeing all the tactics. Let us see what happens here. Black is just attacking the rook on d1. Remember, the knight is still hanging on h6. The basic point is that if rook takes e1, now the knight on c4 forks the king and the rook on f3. Say king c1, knight takes f3, and white has once again two pieces under attack, and he's immediately losing one of them. Well, other possibilities here for white. I mean, your rook on d1 is under attack. You cannot move it because it's pinned. The other possibility could be rook c1, but once again, the knight jumps on d2 with a check. King c2. We are taking f3. If rook takes e1, the knight takes the rook back on e1 with a check. Black has already won a piece, and still his knight is hanging here without much future. So obviously rook e1, a very strong and a very beautiful move. Topalov saw it, and he resigned the game after 36 moves. And well, Grischuk comes back after yesterday's time travel blunder against Caruana, wins a game back to 50%, and a nice game in a nice round here in Norway chess. Thanks for watching.